So, congrats to the Pacers for making me look like a fool for trusting the Knicks over them. And real quickly, just to gloss over the regular season for the Knicks, everything was going as it should for them. They had no injuries in the playoffs, which was needed because they only had seven NBA caliber players pretty much. Point differential wise, per 100 versus top 10 teams in the regular season, the Knicks showed that they should not be trusted against the top competition, as they were 12th in point differential in said games with a minus 5.5 point differential. The Pacers were much better. They were 7th with an okay, even point differential. The Knicks, they had a very good offense. They were 8th, and defensively, they were 22nd. The Pacers were a lot more balanced. The Pacers should have been trusted for that reason. The only thing that the Knicks really had was they had the brighter star talent and they relied on transition less, which is a good recipe in the playoffs when transition buckets are not as available. The Knicks in the regular season finished third in the East despite not beating any team ahead of them, I believe, in the entire year. They didn't in the East, at least until very late into the season. I didn't see what they did the final couple games, but I know that with very minimal games left, they didn't beat a single team ahead of them in the standings. So they finished just behind Boston and Cleveland, which showed that they were handling business in every other game, though. Playoff wise, actually, before we get into the playoffs, I would give their regular season grade a B because third in the East sounds very good. Boston and Cleveland were very legit, so it's hard to beat out them. But not beating any of the top teams was a bit wonky, and Towns was so good, as was Brunson. It seemed like everybody else, though, was just not clicking as they should. OG, I thought, was pretty soundly their third best player because I think he's a lot better defensively, honestly, than Mikal Bridges. And offensively, you could have the conversation of OG ahead of Bridges. I thought Bridges was not particularly good this season. We'll get into him in the playoffs in a second. So I think a B is fair for them in the regular season. It was good, but not as good as you were maybe hoping for. And as for the playoffs, beating Detroit and Boston in 6 games each, respectively, pretty solid. The Pistons were definitely a plucky team with some real superstar talent in Cade Cunningham. So that's no small feat. And of course, beating the Celtics, they were probably going to win even if Tatum didn't get hurt because it looked like they were going to go up 3-1 on the Celtics, but the injury definitely solidified that. So that's a great, feat beating the Celtics and the Pistons. I know the Pistons weren't, the most highly regarded because they were still super young and they did have some real holes, but Boston looked like a very legit team. So beating them in any scenario is impressive. There's the caveat that Boston kind of beat themselves as they just shot so poorly, even with open shots a lot of the time against the Knicks. But, the Knicks capitalized on that. And their recipe seemed to be clicking heading into the Pacers series, where very minimal guys, only 7 guys really in the rotation, and, solid contributions in spots from OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges and Josh Hart. Then Mitchell Robinson, too, became a key feature. But, the very bulk, more than almost any other team, was going to be Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns. It seemed like it could work because Brunson was playing so well and Towns had really taken his game to a new level. Both super efficient, both great scoring. Towns was giving you some really good rebounding. Brunson was giving great playmaking, great assist to turnover ratio. In the series, that sort of played out, statistically at least. Brunson, 65% true shooting, 33 points from games 1 through 5. Really rough, though, game 6, 44% from the field, only 19 points. Just over a 1 assist to turnover ratio with 7 assists to 5 turnovers was not good in game 6, which is kind of funny since he was the clutch player of the year, which I know is not really a reputable award, but the NBA is kind of trying to make it one. Dude folded so hard in an elimination game. And, part of that, I do want to give a ton of credit to Aaron Nesmith, as he was playing some of the best defense I've ever seen, not just for against Brunson. I mean, just full stop, best defense against a great player you'll ever see. He was on Brunson like butter on toast. He was not giving him any space, and he got hurt partway through game 6. So I was thinking, even though the game wasn't going exactly how the Knicks wanted, I was like, maybe that's the chance. Maybe Brunson can go off now because he's finally going to have some open looks. That didn't really, come to fruition. Of course, with Halliburton, he is the playmaker first, and his playmaking was absolutely astounding. It was better than it was in the regular season when he had like a 7 assist to turnover ratio about, and it was 10-1 from games 1 through 5. And in game 6, it was 13 assists to 4 turnovers. I know 4 turnovers is really high for Halliburton because he averages 1.5 a game. But if you can give me 13 assists, I'm fine with 4 turnovers. And 21 points on 53% from the field. That's amazing. Halliburton drastically outplayed Brunson in game 6. That was really the story of this game. Towns also disappointed quite a bit, which, again, you're relying super heavily on your top 2 guys. All teams are relying a lot on their top 2 guys, but again, more so for the Knicks than most teams. Brunson didn't play up to snuff. He was outplayed by Halliburton, and Siakam so drastically outplayed Towns, it was not even a discussion. Towns with 42% from the field, 22 points, 3 offensive rebounds, which is really good, but a 2-to-2 assist to turnover ratio. Siakam was super, super efficient with 56%, 31 points, 2 offensive rebounds as well. It was awesome. Siakam was so much better than Towns. Siakam plays much better defense as well. That was true throughout the entire series. Towns was getting picked apart. Siakam was a fine or better defender pretty much all the way through. And the really disappointing thing about this is OG Anunoby was not very good throughout the series, but had a spectacular game 6, super efficient, 56% from the field, 24 points. He gave everything he could. Aaron Nesmith was great when he was healthy, but he only played about 20 minutes, still gave you 50% shooting, 10 points, so that was great. But Mikal Bridges, most importantly, had a terrible series. He was not able to slow down Halliburton and got Brunson involved in a lot of defense because he couldn't keep up with Halliburton, which is bad because Brunson's carrying so much of the offense and he's not a good defender. You don't want him getting involved in key defensive moments, but he did quite a lot because Bridges, again, couldn't keep up with Halliburton. So Bridges overall had 49% true shooting, which is just so bad. He generally is at 59%, so 10 percentage points worse. 16 points looks fine for him. 2 offensive rebounds a game, that's good. But he was super efficient in game 6. 67% from the field, 15 points. Not good with the 4 assists to 5 turnovers. But overall, he was far and away at his best in this game with the super efficient game. And, Brunson just not being there and Towns letting the team down quite a bit. Not enough, even if OG and Bridges are at their best. So, very weird for the Knicks. A story of, 2 situations where Brunson and Towns were carrying up until game 6. They completely fall off come game 6. And the role players who were kind of just whatever or worse in the case of Bridges, they finally figure it out come game 6. And it's just not enough because, these Pacers are an absolute unit. I didn't think the Knicks were going to blow them out or anything, but I did favor the Knicks going into this series, so I'll own up to that one. That was not a great take. It was a pretty close series, I thought, going into it. I think most people thought it would be competitive, but for the most part, the Pacers just picked apart all the flaws of the Knicks and showed that, being able to go 8 guys deep, and in some cases, like 9 guys deep, with Bradley being in the fold as well, that's really advantageous over a team that can really only play 7 guys. Shamit got some minutes, Wright got some minutes. Think that was about it for the other bench guys beyond Robinson and McBride, but they were not giving really good minutes. They had good plus minuses in the case of Shamit, I believe, but I don't really think that was much of anything. I think that was kind of just happenstance. I would not trust him in any sort of meaningful minutes. So that's something that's going to be problematic for the Knicks. I think is also just not figuring out what to do with Halliburton. Halliburton, a fantastic player. I think he's right there with Brunson. Very different players. Brunson, obviously, a much better scorer. Halliburton, a much better playmaker. But I think they are right there with each other. I think it all balances out. Halliburton, though, just made Bridges look like a fool a lot of the times. And that's not totally on Bridges. I think part of that is on Thibodeau for keep just throwing Bridges out there and saying, just find a way to stop him, because OG needed to be on Siakam to match the physicality. I would have liked to see Josh Hart on Halliburton a bit, especially when Hart was out there for a good amount anyway. So it wasn't like, he just wasn't playing. So I thought just trying Bridges on Halliburton relentlessly was a bad move. But at the end of the day, Bridges does have to play better as well. He was not efficient, so it wasn't just on defense that he was bad. He was struggling a lot overall. That's the guy you gave up, 50 first round picks for. So that's pretty rough. Things look pretty rough for the Knicks, even with the East being wide open, with Tatum being out for pretty much the entirety of the upcoming season, at least that we can project. You won't figure he's going to be at full strength, even if he does return, because the Knicks are kind of what they are. Towns looks like the much better asset over Randall, but, the defensive deficiencies are real. They're real with Brunson as well, and they become more real in the playoffs. So, with teams being able to hunt your center and your point guard, the center being the anchor of the defense, the point guard just being able to be relentlessly attacked by pretty much anybody, not great, especially too lots of teams running, 1-5 pick and rolls. So they get both bad defenders involved in the action. That's not great. And, Bridges is not enough to negate the star players for the other teams. So Anunoby, he's going to probably, slow down his guy, I think, pretty well. Hart, the same thing. Robinson's a good anchor, but I just don't think the team meshes as well in a lot of ways as maybe we projected, because the talent's great, but, the defensive issues are real. And just overall, the formula is not quite there with just relying pretty much on Brunson to be the one man offense and then trying to get Towns to carry the rest of it. So for the playoffs, I give them a B plus. I think it's better than the regular season by a bit. I can't bring myself to give them an A because I do think for the most part the Pacers just looked like the better team and they kind of outclassed the Knicks. Going to 6 against a great team like the Pacers is still respectable. And, of course, beating the Celtics is amazing. But I think you're just not quite at that A territory. I could definitely see a world where they're an A, but I think B plus is where I tend to find myself a little bit more. I'm a little bit harsh with grades as well, so even a B plus is still impressive. But I do think there's some reason to be concerned for this team. Those are my thoughts on the 2025 Knicks. Be sure to let me know what yours are in the comment section. Also, be sure to like and subscribe for more basketball and football content.